As I stood there, just an ordinary person amidst all the chaos, it felt like the whole world was falling apart right before my eyes. The sky turned dark, as if even the heavens were mourning, and the ground beneath us shook as if in pain. This was the day when Jesus, the Son of God, was crucified, and there was a heavy feeling of sadness in the air. Then, something incredible happened, something I could hardly believe. The earth trembled so strongly, and the rocks, which are usually solid and unbreakable, suddenly split apart. It was like nature itself couldn't handle the weight of this historic moment. During those shaky moments, I couldn't help but feel a mix of amazement and fear, as if the very way the world worked was coming undone. All these astonishing events unfolded as Jesus was laid to rest. This are the events after Jesus Christ died on the cross. Throughout history, we've been fascinated by the events leading to the crucifixion of Jesus Christ, the trials, the betrayal, and the ultimate sacrifice that defines the Christian faith. However, what often gets overlooked is the remarkable story that unfolds after Jesus' death on the cross. While the events leading up to his execution are well documented and widely talked about, what happened in the days, weeks, and years following his crucifixion carries its own significant meaning. It's a story of hope, transformation, and the emergence of a worldwide movement that would reshape the course of human history. By diving into this lesser-known part of the narrative, we can gain a deeper insight into the lasting influence of Jesus' life and teachings. Here are the 5 things that happened after Jesus died. Something special occurred that Matthew talks about, and this is not mentioned in the other Gospels. The tombs, where God's people who had passed away were buried, opened up. Many of these righteous people came back to life and walked into the holy city of Jerusalem, showing themselves to many others. Earthquakes can damage tombs because they are made of stone. The fact that dead people came back to life can only be explained by God's direct intervention, which suggests that He caused the earthquake. While earthquakes were not uncommon in Palestine due to its location on a major fault line, the combination of the earthquake and the opening of the tombs is a strong sign of the importance of Jesus' crucifixion. Another earthquake will soon show that something else important is happening: the resurrection of Jesus. Matthew's special account of these events highlights the triumph over death that Jesus achieved through his sacrifice on the cross. The people who were brought back to life are described as those who had passed away, a common saying in the New Testament to refer to people who have died but are guaranteed a place in heaven. Just like the earlier remarkable event, the supernatural resurrection of these righteous individuals and their appearance in Jerusalem serves as a powerful testament to what Jesus accomplished on the cross and his subsequent resurrection. The term holy people likely refers to devout figures from the Old Testament, such as heroes and martyrs from Israel's history, chosen to provide a miraculous testimony to these events. Their appearance in Jerusalem is a testament to the effectiveness of Jesus' work on the cross and his victory over death in his resurrection. This anticipates what Paul later taught about Jesus being the first to rise from the dead. Right now, we believe that Jesus came back to life after he died. He was the first one to come back to life in a special, perfect body. This shows us that someday, people who have died will also come back to life. You know how death came into the world because of a man? Well, now because of another man, people can come back to life after they died. Just like everyone dies because of what Adam did, Now everyone can come back to life because of what Jesus did, but it will happen in steps. First, Jesus came back to life, and then, at some point in the future, people who follow Jesus will also come back to life with perfect bodies. When this happens to holy people, it's like a sneak peek of what will happen to all the believers. With the passing of Jesus, a new era has dawned, a time when death has been overcome by death itself. Resurrection to everlasting life has become possible, but it's important to note that it wasn't until after Jesus came back to life that the people in these graves were also raised and appeared to many in Jerusalem. The temple curtain was ripped in two. In the book of Matthew, in verses 50 to 51, it says that Jesus let out a loud, agonized cry and willingly let go of his spirit as part of his Father's plan. Right away, the curtain that covered the Holy of the Holies in the temple was torn from the top to the bottom. The earth shook and the rocks were split apart. This curtain in the temple was torn in two, and it was the only thing that separated the sacred part from the holiest area of the temple. It was like a clear sign of the division between God and humans. According to Acts, in the early days of the church, many priests also believed in the faith. Perhaps this torn curtain helped them understand the significance of Jesus' work, and that's likely how people came to know about it. In the book of Hebrews, in chapters 9, verses 1 to 9, it explains that in the temple, a curtain separated the Holy of Holies, which was where God's presence was believed to reside, from the rest of the temple where people lived. Now, as believers in the completed work of Christ, we have a better high priest in him. Through him, we can enter the Holy of Holies. In Hebrews chapter 10, verses 19 to 20, it says, "We can confidently enter the most sacred place through the blood of Jesus, through a new and living way that he opened for us by tearing the curtain, which is like his body." When we see this event, it's like a picture of Jesus' body being torn for us, just as he tore the curtain for us. The book of Hebrews offers a wonderfully clear explanation of what the tearing of the curtain really means. The curtain that always hung in the temple was a constant reminder that because of sin, humans weren't good enough to be in God's presence. Even with all the daily animal sacrifices and the once-a-year sin offering, it was clear that sin couldn't be truly forgiven or wiped away. But thanks to what Jesus did on the cross, the barriers that used to separate God from people have been removed. Now, we can confidently approach God. In Hebrews, in chapter 4, verses 14 to 16, it says, "We believers have a great high priest, Jesus, the Son of God, who understands our weaknesses and temptations because he's been through it all, just like we have, yet without sin. So we can go to God's throne with confidence, without fear, to receive mercy for our mistakes and find his amazing grace when we need it most." From top to bottom, alongside the death of God's Son, the natural world experienced significant tremors, as if there was a deep connection between lifeless creation and its creator. Darkness covered the whole land. In the book of Matthew, chapter 27, verse 45, it says that from noon until 3 p.m., the entire land was engulfed in darkness. This was a very dense darkness that fulfilled a scripture from Amos chapter 8 verse 9, where God said, "I will make the sun go down at noon, and I will darken the earth in broad daylight." Many people had asked Jesus for a heavenly sign, and now they had one, but it symbolized their spiritual blindness. This unusual darkness occurred when the sun was shining the brightest because it was a full moon, ruling out the possibility of an eclipse, since a full moon can come between the earth and the sun. God's swift action not only caused this darkness. It's important to know that people didn't have advanced knowledge of astronomy back then, which aligns with what's written in sacred texts. The sun, as a creation of God, couldn't bear witness to the wrongs done to its creator, so it hid its rays to avoid seeing wicked deeds. The darkness that happened at such a crucial moment could have several meanings. Firstly, In the past, darkness was linked to mourning, and it was also associated with the deaths of important figures. People, whether they were Gentiles or Jews, could see this darkness as a cosmic sign accompanying the passing of a king. Furthermore, darkness was seen as a sign of God's judgment. The soldier overseeing the execution realized that Jesus was innocent. In the book of Matthew, chapter 27, verses 53 to 54, it says that the centurion and his soldiers who were guarding Jesus saw the earthquake and everything that was happening. They became extremely frightened and filled with amazement, saying, "Truly, this was the Son of God." The centurion's duty was to make sure the crucifixion went smoothly without any problems. He usually led 100 soldiers, and at the time of the crucifixion was a seasoned career soldier who had climbed the ranks due to his bravery and intelligence. To be in his position, he needed to be both tough and efficient. He had to obey the orders of his superiors. What happened at Jesus' crucifixion was so extraordinary that even a battle-hardened Roman centurion acknowledged that Jesus was the Son of God. This realization meant that Jesus was innocent of the charges he was crucified for. The centurion must have felt a mix of emotions. He had just overseen the crucifixion of an innocent man. These weren't the hushed words of a frightened rookie or the shaky words of a drafty who could be easily influenced. These were the recent conclusions of an experienced veteran, a man who had witnessed countless men meet terrible fates and had been responsible for their executions made by the Jewish religious leaders who had Jesus put on the cross for blasphemy, and his commander-in-chief, Pontius Pilate, had confirmed the conviction due to Jesus making such a claim. However, he changed his stance and acknowledged Jesus' claim. Why? It was because the evidence in favor of Christ was compelling. Even though he had seen many crucifixions, this execution stood out. What did he witness? Several incidents from Jesus' arrest, trial, and crucifixion came together to make a powerful statement. The first thing was Jesus' response to the injustice he had suffered at the hands of his fellow countrymen during his arrest and trials. The centurion had supervised many crucifixions, but perhaps it was Jesus' reaction to the torment inflicted by the centurion and his men that struck him. One could consider the dignity with which Jesus faced the angry mob demanding his execution. The scriptures don't mention any response by Jesus to the mob's shouts. Instead, the chief priests stirred up the crowd to have Pilate release Barabbas instead. Pilate asked, "What should I do with the one you call the King of the Jews?" They shouted back, "Crucify him." When Pilate asked why, what evil he had done, they screamed even louder, "Crucify him." So to please the crowd, Pilate released Barabbas instead. After having Jesus flogged, handed him over to his soldiers to be crucified. Their forgiveness, not his own escape, was the concern of Jesus. His mercy extended to the people who had rejected him and the soldiers responsible for crucifying him, including the centurion. His response? "Father, forgive them," revealed his compassion. "Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing." While they were casting lots to divide his clothing, the onlookers included people who watched, but even the religious leaders jeered and taunted him, saying, "He saved others from death. Let him save himself if he is the Christ, the Messiah, and the anointed of God, his chosen one." The soldiers also made fun of him, approaching with sour wine and sarcastically saying, "If you're truly the King of the Jews, save yourself from death." Above him, there was an inscription, "This is the King of the Jews." One of the criminals crucified alongside him also insulted him, saying, "Aren't you the Christ? Save yourself and us from death." While they were gambling for Jesus' belongings, his primary concern was their forgiveness, not his own escape. This is a powerful message. The centurion had witnessed, heard, and felt every part of the crucifixion and Christ's death. Consequently, he and his soldiers were deeply scared. Even though they had learned to deal with fear, they were now overwhelmed with terror. It's the profound meaning of the cross and the love shown there that touches hearts. Even the tough, battle-hardened heart of a career soldier. There is an old saying that goes, "At the foot of the cross, the ground is always level." This was true in the first century, and it remains true today. At the foot of the cross, everyone, regardless of their wealth or social status, finds a level place to kneel and embrace the Christ who died for them. Jesus endured the separation from the Father's presence, and although it was agonizing, it was part of God's loving plan for redemption. Some may view these events as myths or theological stories, but they are all unique occurrences that bear witness to God's extraordinary actions in human history. These are remarkable supernatural testimonies that provide confirmation.